Chrysanthemum Blue, Chapter 1, Sun Chu-Hua. Please like and subscribe and hit the notification bell. 菊花蓝第一章孙楚华。租赁点赞和订阅并点击通知铃铛。
Beijing, China. The subway, like a magic carpet, whooshed silently from Chaoyang Park to the Dawanglu district. The car was filled with passengers who had grown accustomed to the high-tech accoutrements of the Chinese megacity. Things were new and mostly worked. Sun Chu-Hua had visited New York her third year at the university. Riding the subway there was a somewhat different experience. USA was challenging for Chu-Hua in so many ways. It was one sensory overload episode after another. She was super fluent in English, which made her travel in America easier. She was anxious to go back. But she also wanted to go back to France, to India, and to Japan, and maybe even Australia. Now that she had a job, a career, just taking off would be difficult. Also, her employer might want to restrict travel to certain places. The USA might be one of those certain places. Line 14 whizzed down the track, each stop announced in multiple languages. Shilihe, Pingleyuan, and Julongshan all passed. Doors opened, people got in and people got out. Mostly business types, and better paid workers who could afford to live in one of the nicer areas of Beijing. Then, there was another stop. This one was not on the route map, no number, no name, no announcement. The train just stopped. 4 people got off, no one got on. This was Chu-Hua's stop. She was one of the 4. They walked up the steps onto the street. There were no markings on the way down to the train. Very little traffic on the narrow road, and no cars parked next to the curbs. On the other side of the street was a large plain concrete building. There were no windows, no markings, no address. Chu-Hua, along with the others, walked across the street to the entrance. No one spoke. Chu-Hua didn't know these people. She had seen them around, mostly on the subway, but had never spoken to them. The entrance was ordinary. A single metal door on the south side of the building. Several dozen people were heading towards that door, coming from all directions. Chu-Hua had seen all these people around but had never had a conversation with any of them. People didn't talk. The less you knew outside of your own area, the better. The door was unguarded and unlocked. You could walk right into the building undeterred. That outside door led to a short hallway with 4 single blast-proof doors, each with their own steel railings and remotely viewed millimeter wave detectors. This setup was to accommodate a larger number of people coming and going. Employee work start times were staggered throughout the day and night. That way, a large congregation of people trying to get inside at any particular time could be avoided. The idea was to draw as little attention to the building as possible. A full hand scanner was used as entry security for the doors. Chu-Hua put her hand on the scanner, the lock clicked, and she passed through into a foyer.
不，你不能进来。您必须持有通行证。
Just past the door, there was always an armed guard who floated menacing scowls at the arriving workers. The message was, "This is serious business here. Follow the rules, or it's your ass." It was someone new today, a young woman, maybe 20. She was occupied and had her back to Chu-Hua as she came through the door. As Chu-Hua walked by, the guard caught a glimpse of her and panicked. "Oh! No, you can't be in here. You must leave now." Chinese women often look younger to Westerners than they really are. The youthful look is ordinary to Chinese, but Chu-Hua's height at 4 feet, 9 inches and 88 pounds, her porcelain complexion, and schoolgirl face had fooled the guard. Chu-Hua was 24 and older than the guard. She had a chuckle as she pulled the badge out of her shoulder bag. The guard, not wanting to screw up on her first day at the main door, studied the badge closely and stared at Chu-Hua. She finally gave it back and nodded. Chu-Hua had a giggle as she headed towards her access door. The foyer had a half-dozen doors that dispersed workers to their respective areas. Chu-Hua's was through door 3, up one flight of stairs, and into a large warehouse-style open bay that had been cordoned off into smaller cubicles. Chu-Hua's bay contained 8 desks, with one currently unoccupied. Her desk was punctuated by 3 monster LED screens, a keyboard, several accessory devices, and a lockbox. Her chair was big and comfy. Chu-Hua hit the keyboard and brought the electronic beast to life. Then came the passwords and codes. 6 in all. As she completed the final code, Mr. Liu, her group supervisor, leaned over, put in a code, and then used a key hung around his neck to unlock the box. There was a lot of stuff inside the box, including thumbprint readers. Both Chu-Hua and Mr. Liu entered their prints. The screen lit up with the Chinese flag and the symbols for MSS, Ministry of State Security, China. Sun Chu-Hua's workday began. Spy vs. Spy in the movies, aka Tom Cruise, 007, etc., is tense, exciting, and dangerous. The truth is, most of the useful information comes not from assets risking life in the field, but from analysts sitting in front of computers. The term, data mining, is for real. Bits and pieces that Chu-Hua might uncover during her day's toil might seem innocuous at first. However, when assembled with thousands of other bits and pieces, a picture emerges. Contemporary intelligence is generally not a series of bombshells, but a series of assembled puzzles that started out as millions of pieces. Chu-Hua's pod was charged with the monitoring and procurement of information from sensitive industries in North America and Western Europe. You can tell a lot about what a firm is up to by monitoring what they are buying as capital equipment and raw materials. Also, who they are hiring, who they are firing, and who their sales representatives are meeting for lunch, and how expensive the wine bill is. Chu-Hua's specialty was Swedish tech and heavy industry. Over the past several decades, Sweden had flown neatly under the radar developing and producing super high-tech weapon systems. These systems were often available for bargain prices. Imagine that. The peaceful and new age-loving Swedes producing death for fun and profit. The Bofors 40 autocannon and the JAS-39 fighter aircraft are highly sought-after weapons by military organizations, both big and small. Less price and a way more bang. Of equal concern to China's military was Sweden's effort to produce a fighter jet that equaled the performance of any in the world and was super stealthy. Also, in development with Norway, was a non-nuclear pocket sub that was ultra-quiet and undetectable. Sweden would have zero interest in sharing any details or specifications of any of these or other potential projects. Chu-Hua would spend this day, and every day sniffing out those things that companies and other governments wanted to keep secret. She would do it by the scrutiny of pilfered documents, like invoices, purchase orders, shipping documents, resumes of employees, and expense accounts. All easy to nick because of sloppy or non-existent computer firewalls. Easy to get would be text, emails, intra-firm memos, and personal issues like divorce, bankruptcies, and credit information. It was snoop, snoop, snoop. On Chu-Hua's morning worksheet was an order to sort through some recently hacked expense account submissions from upper management of Nordland's Teknisk Industri, or Nortek for short. Nortek wasn't directly into the arms business. They manufactured a line of very technical precision pieces like pumps, bearings and their casings, gearing, and anything made from exotic metal alloys. The company held over 600 international patents. Many of their products found their way into various armaments, missiles, spacecraft, and both civilian and military aircraft. The company was tight on maintaining security of their patents and manufacturing techniques, but loosey-goosey on everything else. Chinese firms were always more than happy to rip off companies like this. And it was always good to see who was buying what from them. Double true for a firm that subcontracted parts for the new Gripen 39E fighter jet, purported to be the new badass of the skies. Chu-Hua began scanning the memos. Most, maybe all were vanilla.
Werner had to buy a ream of paper out of pocket. 196 krona. So exciting. Frija had to buy coffee for the break room. 172 krona. Oh wow. Ingela turned in her expenses for 3 days in Stockholm to meet with Skatteverket, Swedish tax agency. 4,212 krona. Yuck yuck. What is this? On the 22nd, VP of Technical Acquisitions, Olaf Peterson. Let's see. Olaf went to lunch at Provence Cafe in Gothenburg with J. Fine. 11,622 krona. Wow! Nice lunch. 这太疯狂了. The bill was paid with a company card. Who is J. Fine? Does this cafe have CCTV? Let's find out.
Chu-Hua's pod only mined data. They didn't evaluate or analyze. Normally, it was make a note and pass it on, or create a database and submit it in the daily work output. Something about a super extra extravagant lunch bill, paid for with the tightest company's credit card, advanced her curiosity. She wasn't thinking so much about propriety or company rules. She was bored with creating databases. This sparked her brain. After morning exercise, she would look further. Chu-Hua had known her 24 forms in Tai Chi since she was 6. She had only used the discipline one time. That was in her second year at university when some country boys got too frisky at a cafe she was at with some girlfriends. A young man was left having to explain how he got a large lump under his eye and a dislocated shoulder, while trying to plant a kiss on an 80-pound girl. Chu-Hua was one of 24 people working out in the passageways between the pods. She was finding it hard to concentrate on the moves. Her head was consumed by Olaf and J. Fine. After exercise, she returned to her terminal. Mr. Liu had left a pot of hot tea for her. She sipped the tea and began scanning for any information that MSS had on Olaf Peterson. They had a short dossier.
Olaf, 49. Married, wife Amelia. Oh, she American. 2 children, they're older now. 1 at university, 1 in college. Olaf went to USA for education, Florida University, then Duke for international law. Salary, 3.8 million krona per year. Wow! 薪水非常好. Hired by Nortec 7 years ago. Does charity work for various agencies around Gothenburg.
Chu-Hua knew MSS had been looking at Nortec for some time. Their interest in the company had been focused on possibly lifting some manufacturing techniques. They had little interest on any acquisitions or personnel. Still, it was unusual they had little knowledge of one of the company's most important employees.
So who or what is J. Fine?
MSS low-ranking analyst and data miners were discouraged from voyaging outside their assigned area. For the worker bees, the attitude was, the less you know, the better. No one tested the boundaries. Pressing the outer limits with the Chinese government usually ended up bad for your health. No one had ever told Chu-Hua she couldn't hack for information. Fact was, she was great with code. She had never broken into anything. That didn't mean she didn't know how.
Does the Provence Cafe have CCTV? Of course, they do. Every place does. The receipt has the address of the cafe and time. Okay, first order placed at 12:32. Bill paid at 16:22. 4 hours for lunch. 2 bottles of wine. Chateau Margaux, of course. 2,480 krona. Each. Tornadoes Rossini. What is that? Anyway. Times 2. 2,240 krona. Each. 4 desserts. 4. Wow.
Chu-Hua's job paid well. She had money in the bank. Still, such an exorbitant display of excessiveness ran counter to her working-class Chinese upbringing. This sort of display pointed to Nortec wanting something from this J. Fine. In her mind it was something big, and something secret.
If this was ordinary negotiation, it would take place in an office or meeting room. This was clandestine in an out-of-the-way cafe. Meeting with only one person there. Only need to know, and not many people needed to know. Jay Fine was either rich or wanted to feel like he was. Big shot. He was decadent. He got what he wanted. Olaf covered the bill.
Mr. Liu was older. He had been with MSS from the very beginning. He had been a field operative for 25 years. This new position was a tame one and sort of a reward for a lifetime of duty to the Communist Party and to the ministry. He would be able to work his way towards retirement in safety. He liked Chu-Hua. He had no daughters, and Chu-Hua looking so young, it was like he had his own teen daughter to guide and fashion. Liu also knew Chu-Hua's father, son Jianyu, who had been a loyal party member his entire adult life. Jianyu never rose above being a factory worker but volunteered many services to the party over the years. He was rewarded with his daughter getting the best education and a very good job at MSS. His real prize from the party was his daughter, Chu-Hua. She was born in the one-child era. He managed an exception from the government allowing for him to have a second child, hopefully a son. Her parents gave it their best effort. The second child never came. Chu-Hua made her pitch to Mr. Liu. He listened, but the reception was cool. You want me to request a computer hack on this Provence cafe and download the CCTV archives?
Yes, that is what I want. I want to see if we can get a visual of this Jay Fine. No one spends 10,000 yuan on lunch for two.
Yes, some people do. But I admit, it does seem unusual. I should send a memo to supervisor, and they will determine this warrants further investigation. If so, you will get a commendation for your work. That will be valuable to you in the future.
I would like to investigate this myself. Something is happening here. These are not idle bourgeois having lunch and being conspicuous. This is an officer of a profitable corporation who makes parts for some of the most lethal weapons in existence. I don't think they steal away to an obscure cafe and spend 10,000 yuan unless there is something to be gained.
That is logical. I understand you would like to do something more interesting. But this is safe, very safe, and it pays well. Very well.
You won't do it.
She had never spoken that aggressively to Liu, or anyone.
I don't really want to be safe. Or at least not that safe.
Liu was taken back by Chu-Hua's insistence.
这会很不寻常，但我会尝试。I don't think there is much chance for the supervisor to grant your request.
Chu-Hua, like most Chinese, understood the concept of the brick wall. The synonym for brick wall is bureaucracy. The Great Wall of China wasn't an ancient fortification but the government and the CCP. The first and primary directive of a bureaucracy is to maintain the status quo. That happened by workers staying in their slot. You step over the line, someone else's toes will be there, and you will step on them. A good bureaucrat had eyes straight ahead, chin up, frozen neck, and did their job, no more, no less. That way, the system could sustain itself and all within it. Mr. Liu was nearing retirement. He had been around and seen a lot. Old people who have seen a lot generally look for peace in their later years. Seeking peace and safety was a difficult concept for a young person like Chu-Hua to grasp. She was smart, very smart. Though Mr. Liu's position was frustrating, she knew he was looking after her best interest. Let it go. Forget about it. Pass it up the line. If it's important, someone will act on it, and I will get a star by my name for doing good work. Chu-Hua nodded, okay. Mr. Liu smiled and nodded, yes. He knew that son Chu-Hua was disappointed, and he understood why. He walked slowly out of her cubicle. Chu-Hua was not angry, just numb. Fuck. Chu-Hua wasn't prone to using that word a lot, particularly at work. She was accustomed to simply coming to work and doing what she was told. But with an opportunity to do something worthwhile and exciting staring her in the face. Suddenly, fuck, seemed terribly appropriate. So, she said it again.
Fuck.
The train headed back north to the Chaoyang area. The car was crowded, and Chu-Hua had to stand. She passed the time thinking about this guy Jay Fine. She was beginning to realize just how bored she was at work. Bored at work, bored when not at work, she was thinking. Standing on a Beijing train can do that to you. Nothing else to do but think. Chu-Hua exited the subway at the Chaoyang Park station. She hustled to the Starbucks on Chaoyang Zhongjuan Road. Leanne was already there and sipping on a snowy cheese latte. Chen Leanne was the exact opposite in appearance to Chu-Hua. Instead of mimicking a skinny 14-year-old, Leanne was 1.72 meters tall, with long muscular legs, a woman's butt, and full breasts. Very full breasts. Though both women were only a few days apart in age, and had precisely the same education, they were vastly different. They had met first year at university, but had only become friends recently. Chu-Hua had many friends in college. No one ever announced they were taking a job with MSS, but people usually figured it out. Chu-Hua's many friends hit the exit quickly, including her boyfriend of 4 years, as they began to suspect she was working for the enforcement arm of the authoritarian state. Leanne didn't seem to be bothered by Chu-Hua's association with the government, even though she often confided that she didn't much care for Xi Jinping. Chinese citizens in the professional ranks usually kept their opinions of Xi private. They certainly didn't express them to MSS agents. Leanne didn't need to worry. Chu-Hua valued Leanne's friendship above everything. She had no one else. Leanne had recently become romantically involved. Already, she had much less time to spend hanging out with Chu-Hua at Starbucks and at the local cafes. If Leanne were to marry, she feared there would be little time for their friendship.
How are you doing?
The same. Always the same. Something interesting did come up today, but I wasn't allowed to pursue it. Mr. Liu said I should be safe. Stay in my box. My box.
Any mention of work at MSS was forbidden. Chu-Hua was so frustrated, it just came out. She wasn't too worried that Leanne would repeat it to anyone. Leanne looked her over and could tell her friend was having some issues.
My work is not all that exciting either. We are all in a box, as you put it. The difference is your box pays more than any of ours.
Leanne was referring to Chu-Hua's salary of 190,000 yuan annually. Well above average for a worker of her age and a lot more than Leanne made.
你知道的, money isn't everything.
No, it is not. But it is better to have it than not. 糾正我的小豬。
你和他好嗎? Is everything perfect?
Asked, referring to Leanne's new love interest. She was half hoping Leanne would say, not so good. Instead,
we talked about getting married last night. After sex. It is easy to talk about getting married after good sex.
Just talk. No plans. Well.
Talk. No plans. He wants me. It's obvious. But he is afraid to ask.
Why? That sounds strange. 反正对我来说很奇怪. If he is in love with you, why would he be afraid? 这应该是一件容易的事情.
He is smart enough to know. I do not know.
疯狂的女孩. You don't what? You mean you don't know?
He is pretty and smart, great in bed, and I love having him around. Maybe twice a week. I like curling up with his arms around me and going to sleep after sex. But waking up in the morning is not so much love. Banging into one another, getting ready for work. I do not like it. It is 他擋住了我的路，聞到了浴室的味道. It is uncomfortable.
You want a husband for the weekends and maybe Wednesday?
Maybe. I do not know. I must work it out. I may not have a political say, but I have social freedom. I like drinking these expensive drinks and talking to you. I like not having my bathroom smell in the morning when I am trying to get ready. I do not like the idea of sharing my money.
Chu-Hua was shocked at Leanne's outburst, especially at a public place like that. You would not know who else might be drinking coffee. But she was relieved that marriage to Han was no longer predetermined. She also did not share Leanne's feelings about the government.
I have some news for you. News that should be delivered over expensive French wine, not coffee. 我該死的，好吧，開始吧。So, here goes.
Chu-Hua was perplexed. This sounded like bad news. What sort of bad news could Leanne bring?
I saw Ming Hua today.
That snapped Chu-Hua into the moment. That was bad news. Not what she had expected.
You saw him. How is that possible?
You have not spoken to him.
No. I've tried. I've called him. The first few times he was nice but made an excuse to get off the call with me. The last time, he wasn't so friendly. It was, don't call me again sort of thing.
Really? Today, he told me he missed you.
He said that. Stupid egg.
Little piggy. What do you expect? You have never gotten it. You have taken a job with an organization that allows thugs to drag people off the streets and beat them to death.
I have nothing to do with that. Nothing at all. I record business practices and industrial activities of Scandinavian countries. That's all I do. I have nothing to do with those other things.
What do you think they do with that information?
Trade negotiations. Our merchants use it to make contracts. And defense. To make sure no one is making weapons that will threaten us.
Oh, shit, Chu-Hua. You cannot be this naive, can you?
Chu-Hua was getting upset. She had been over this territory with Leanne before, except the mention of her former boyfriend. Leanne could talk. And then talk some more. This time Chu-Hua was receiving it different. She could feel the knot tightening in her stomach.
I've never hurt anyone.
People are afraid of you. They are afraid they might say something, and you will hear it. It is not they do not trust you or like you. But it is worse now than it has ever been since Mao. It is dangerous. People are being pulled from their homes in the middle of the night. They never come back. No one can afford to risk anything. Even if a boy were to accept your work, he would lose all his friends and maybe his family.
Leanne's position on MSS was well established with Chu-Hua. Normally, she was so happy to have someone around to talk to, she just dismissed Leanne's diatribes as nothing but typical Leanne speak. But this time was different. There was a saying that Chu-Hua had heard in America, touching a nerve. Well then, Leanne had hit her nerve with a good whack.
Darling, I love you. I love being with you. I see you twice a week, maybe. The rest of the time I go out, see friends, or be with my boyfriend. I would take you.
I didn't choose the job.
放蟲小豬，只是在說話。Relax, Piggy. I wanted to tell you about Ming Hua.
Chu-Hua quit pouting and snapped up to listen. She braced herself. She knew this was going to hurt.
The reason he is here is that he accepted a job with a big investment bank. He speaks good English, so they gave him a position in the International Investment Department. A big deal.
Good for him.
Chu-Hua gazed out the window at the busy street. She was upset that Ming Hua was doing well and moving up. There was a big element of spite in her overall feelings towards her ex-boyfriend. Hearing good things were happening to him ran against that grain.
There is more about Ming Hua.
Okay. Let's hear it.
Okay. He was not alone when I met him. He had a girl with him. She looked a little older than he is. Very put together. Works in international law. They were clingy. They looked attached.
Oh. That hurt. A tear formed in Chu-Hua's right eye and ran down her cheek. Her voice was broken.
He has a new girlfriend.
Ming Hua introduced her as his fiancée.
That totally stung Chu-Hua. She sat there with her forehead buried into her hand and her elbow lodged on the table.
I am sorry. But he is in the area. You could run into him and his fiancée. Is better you know before. It is easy to see you still love him. If you should run into him and not expect that, and then get upset. You working for MSS. Well, that might not be a good situation.
Yes, you are right. Could make bad situation worse.
Yes. Could be very bad. You need to do something. You have money, a nice flat. You even have a car. But you can't live so isolated. So alone. I believe as long as she is in power, things will get worse. Maybe the things that go on now, you have nothing to do with it, but that will change.
Chu-Hua was struggling to get air. Both eyes were shedding moisture now. Leanne reached over and squeezed her hand. A nice gesture of friendship, but Chu-Hua had heard and felt enough. She abruptly got up from the table.
I'm going home now. Thank you.
Chu-Hua walked quickly
Where are
towards the
you
door.
going?
She knew she was going to break out in a full-fledged cry. One of those cries that goes on forever. The tears will stream down like from a water faucet, the nose will run a bucket of stuff, and even a giant soft pillow won't muffle the racket. Chu-Hua knew it was coming, and it was coming on fast. She could hear Leanne calling after her. But seconds counted. She barely got to the door when it let go. It had begun to rain. She broke into a run, tears splashing the sidewalk. People turned and stared at this crazy young girl bawling her head off and running down the street in a business suit and heels splashing in the wet sidewalk. She got to a narrow passageway between two nearby buildings, ducked in, and leaned back against the wall. The enclave was filthy. Chu-Hua ignored the dirty water and garbage. She slid down the wall, parking her butt in the mud. She sat in the grime and let the tears go. This was going to be the cry of a lifetime. It would not be for a specific transgression. These tears would be shed for her general state of affairs. It would be a private moment with no consolation from anyone. Any record of this moment of despair would flow away with the rain. Hysterical cry was like being reborn. Chu-Hua emerged from that horrible alley a new person. She felt good.
Please like and subscribe, and possibly express yourself in the comment section below. 请订阅并撒谎。